Hello, BookTube. I think, at least I hope so. I'm getting farther along now in the process than I got last night. Last night, I set everything up. I got everything ready. I took my pants off, and YouTube told me it was not live streaming. That live streaming was not available. And I know that that can't have been universal because there are some streamers whose livelihood depends on it. It would be all over the news today if there had been a general blackout of live streaming last night. So I don't know what it was. There was a kind of weakened storm system moving through New England at the time, but I don't know. Anyway, this appears to be live, and it appears that 5 people are already here. So I'm going to proceed as if this were happening until YouTube tells me it's not. Now, I should start first and foremost with an apology. It's a weird apology. No other booktuber has to make this apology, but nevertheless, I'm at least partially to blame for training you all. I should apologize for the lack of videos on this channel lately. That there hasn't been a lack of videos in the standard of almost any other booktuber or YouTuber, but there has been a lack for me. I have not been making 5 videos a day. Now, partly that was that I had 2 guests almost back to back, and that discombobulated me, and partly that was because I had my book section for a print newspaper in Georgia to babysit and get across the finish line, and partly that was also because the temperatures here were a little on the warm side. Then that aforementioned storm came through and mild things up a little for today, but they're going back up. We're going to have hot weather all week. And that doesn't matter to me. That's no problem to me, but it makes me self-conscious about my little baby bean. None of those are really good excuses. I should be bombarding you with videos, as I do all the time, but nevertheless, I didn't do that yesterday, and I also didn't do that today. There's one other element involved that I hesitate to call a mood. I hate thinking that moods come along and make me do things. I've been spending my whole life poking fun at people who say that about themselves. But I have been in the mood for much more writing and reading than anything else, especially writing. And I have venues, thankfully. I have lots of venues for that. I have print venues. I have online venues. I have totally unstructured venues like my revived book blog, Steve Reads. What a godsend. It's right out there. I can write about anything I want at any time I want, at any length I want, for any reason that I want. I should use this as an opportunity to suggest that maybe you go over and change your unpaid subscription that gives you a paragraph of my deathless prose into a paid subscription. Every day, or not every day, but every time I go over there to Steve Reads, I think about how different my life would be if all my unpaid subscriptions were paid subscriptions. I would be able to write Steve Reads and do nothing else. I could turn down all the trade journals. I could turn down freelance research and writing projects. I could turn down all of that stuff and just write every day. Wouldn't that be amazing? But anyway, that is also a factor, is that I have felt more and more like writing. But those aren't good enough reasons. I value my imaginary booktube friends. I value my careful collection, my curated collection of Ukrainian sex bots. So I want to start with an apology for that, for being largely no-show Joe around here. And then we can do a bit of Irish stew, maybe, before I throw this over to the chat, because this actually does have to be a short Stevestream. Maybe a bit of Irish stew, just a couple of things in the news. Both of them dire. One, I think, well, actually 3 things in the news, all 3 of them dire, but we can get them out of the way since I haven't done an Irish stew in forever, and I get emails about that every day. One would be this remarkable streak of fatal shark attacks in Australia. 3 in the last month. And 2 of them, as far as I can tell, not only witnessed but filmed. Although not, as far as I know, from the footage that's been released, not anything that's really graphic. Just I of course noticed that. I'm interested in the subject. Let's just put it that way. I'm interested in the subject, and this I'm interested in the subject, and I'm also interested in the ways that the subject is reported or tends to be. And there's no doubt in any of these three cases that this was an actual shark attack, that a shark was involved. I think 2 of the 3 were witnessed. So that's one dire subject. Another dire subject would be war. War in the Middle East has exploded to new heights of violence, with combatants now fighting and bombing each other on all sides but one. The major player, the major observer in the violence in the Middle East, aside from the United States, aside from Trump United States, the major player in warfare in the Middle East, the major observer, the major entity that is watching most closely is China. And China has noticed something very vividly, which is that the illusion of American military omnipotence is just that. Now, China probably knew that anyway. It's a shame that they knew it before our drunken Secretary of Defense knew it. But the world is starting to get the impression that they're starting to get the right impression from drone footage of destroyed, charred ruins where American military bases were. They're starting to get the right impression from American lack of material preparation. They're starting to get the right impression from the shrill and idiotic claims on the part of the American Secretary of Defense and the part of the American president that they have unchallenged air control over the whole country of Iran. An obvious falsehood that you don't know if it's a lie or if just they're that dumb. The whole world is watching this, and the whole world is suddenly realizing, well, you know, America doesn't have an infinite supply of anything. And if you're willing to take a god awful amount of pounding, you can exhaust that military supply. There's no place, no entity in the world that's more interested in the exhaustion of that military supply than China. And I believe that China also realizes what all the other participants in the region realize, which is that this needs to be a little more real for Americans on American soil. The fact that gasoline is $6 a gallon right now, the fact that people are losing their jobs because they can't afford to go to their job, the fact that in August and early September, there are going to be rationing lines at grocery stores, that's pain, that's impact on American soil, but that's not military. That's not lives lost, not directly, not in fire, not in sulfur. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are by proxy strikes on American soil. A lot more, I think there have been already, but I think a lot more and a lot more undeniable in the coming weeks. Because a lot of the participants who are right now slamming the hell out of each other and not being covered in the news, not being covered in the fascist mainstream media in America, as far as Americans are concerned, none of this is happening. But a lot of those participants they aren't united by much. They're united mainly by a visceral hatred of the government of Israel, and also by their growing acknowledgement that Americans are just sitting back here watching a video game. None of it's redounding to the home front. And I think a lot of the participants, whether they are technically on our side or not, a little side note here, absolutely no one in that region of the world is on our side. If you're an American and you still think that, you shouldn't. But a lot of the participants on our side are starting to think that maybe that passive video game enjoyment of a funny little war across the world should end. So that's sort of thing number 2, and then sort of thing number 3 is something that you may have seen, and if you saw it, you saw it reported by the fascist-friendly mainstream media in the United States, which means you saw it lied about. Because we all know what we're dealing with here. There's no use anymore in saying, well, technically, the words don't say that. No, we are all now living in a mob-run country. We're not all now living in The Godfather, where the whole point is that you're never explicit about what you mean. And along those lines, it is therefore not an exaggeration to say that the White House website, paid for with taxpayer dollars, has put out a call for the execution of a whole long list of so-called new journalists, of YouTube journalists. Now, a Trump cult member would say, no, it didn't. It just listed them as media offenders. And that's all. I mean, all they're saying is that the Trump administration doesn't like them. Now, like I said, that's dumb. That's just dumb. It's willful. It's willful ignorance, and everybody who talks that way knows that. We are living under mob rule. And if a mobster, as you all know, from even if you have no direct experience, you know it from movies. If a mobster says, better go over to his house and cancel his lifetime subscription, you're not talking about putting a postcard in the mail to Sports Illustrated. You're talking about killing him. You're talking about killing him. Media offenders is the Trump regime on the White House website putting out a call for the execution of David Pakman, Brian Tyler Cohen, Aaron Parnas, a whole bunch of people, all the people on there. That is a call for their execution. Every person on that list is going to have to quintuple their expenses for personal security. Every person on that list is going to have to look twice when they get out of their car to pump gas on the way to a friend's wedding. Every single one on that list is now incredibly vulnerable because a clarion call has been put out to the Trump faithful to kill them. They are offending your God. I just wanted to mention it because I know for a fact that these obscene things that the Trump regime is doing every single day, I worry that the outrage is just deadening about them. That everyone in the country is just deadening their outrage because it happens all the time, and it's going to continue to happen all the time, just all the time. Probably for a lot of you for the rest of your natural life. Actually, for all of you for the rest of your natural life, but for a lot of you, the rest of your natural life, it'll be conducted by this particular gangster. So I wanted to make sure that if you saw any mention of that in your news feed, you weren't writing it off as simply, we don't like these people. This is a call for them to be murdered. It's not using those words, not only because mobsters just reflexively don't, but also because these particular mobsters in charge still have in the back of their mind that they might someday be held legally accountable. So they don't feel right issuing a death call, a fatwa. They don't feel right just explicitly doing that, even though that's explicitly what they want. They're not going to be held accountable. So I don't know why they think that, but nevertheless. So there you go. Sharks, the Middle East, and fatwa on a whole bunch of people whose videos you probably watch. On the White House website, paid for with taxpayer dollars. So that is a little Irish stew. There's so many other things that I haven't done on this channel in the last, when is it since Sam came here? Over a week. Well over a week. We haven't done Jane Eyre. We haven't returned to the Pallisers. I haven't done June on the Range. I haven't done Book Trek. We haven't done Friday Rights. A lot. It's been a lot of things, and I know that. I've been getting your emails, and I will correct. But in the meantime, let's throw it over to the chat and see what's on all your minds now that you are gazing upon my pulchritude. And the first person out of the gate is Sean Patrick. Hi, Steve. When did publishers start putting the words "a novel" on the front of books? Do they really need to do this? I don't remember exactly when they did it, but I bet they really do need to do it. Yeah. Mainly because they are playing to the fact that of the tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of people who are still willing to go to bookstores and pay money for books and read them, or at least intend to read them, of that tiny, tiny sliver of people, I would say no more than 1 million people in the whole world. In the whole world of 9 billion people, I'd say no more than 1 million people, maybe 2. Of that, let's say 2 million people, of that 2 million people, 1,995,000 of them will only read fiction. They won't read any nonfiction at all. So putting a novel on the front of your book is it's not anymore just a matter of clarification. It's also an advertisement. So I don't like it, but nevertheless. Nate Bouchard makes a hideous pun. Morgan Mello says, "Hey, Steve, have you watched Spider Noir?" No. Transparent Disguise says, "Hi, Steve. Have you made any longer videos of Game of Thrones? I'm curious about your opinion on it, but I couldn't find anything on YouTube." Haven't made a longer video on it, no. I'm assuming here you mean the novels. And I like them just fine. I part with the fantasy only fans and also the dude bros on some aspects. I never lose sight of the fact that they are mostly awful in terms of prose. Just awful. You'll really hear it if you read it out loud. But nevertheless enjoyable. God knows I'm not going to hold science fiction or fantasy against. I'm not going to hold bad prose against them, or there's precious little that I would read. And I like the overall. I liked the overall idea of Game of Thrones. The most that I've mentioned it on this channel, like 9 or 10 years ago, I mentioned offhandedly on this channel that, of course, George R.R. Martin is never going to finish it. He doesn't even think about it anymore. And I got howls of protest. And every time I've said that ever since, I've got howls of protest. And the only people who don't protest are the writers out there. And I have sometimes said, you writers out there, listen to what I'm saying. Think about that big book you're working on, and then you tell me what would happen if you never thought about it anymore. I'm not saying work on it. I'm saying if you never thought about it anymore. And all of them agreed instantly. Oh, if I stopped thinking about it, then of course I would never write it. I will never write it. Well, George R.R. Martin doesn't think about Game of Thrones anymore. Doesn't think about it at all. So he's not going to finish it. And then occasionally I have mentioned the TV series, most of which I really, really liked. Let's see here. Rasmus says, what was going through your mind the moment before you recorded your first ever BookTube video? I tell you the truth, the main thing that was on my mind was whether or not it was going to bother my girls. My fat basset hound Lucy and my pointer Malin. They were sitting, on the other side of the room. Well, I did my first video with Chris Rhodes and Giselle Bradley, then Giselle Bradley. They came over here for our library book sale, and we did a video. We did the BookTube newbie tag. And I didn't think at all about, I wasn't nervous at all, even tech-wise, because Chris had that in hand. I didn't need to think about it. Maybe I was a little nervous about whether or not that would work once he wasn't around. but the first time, no. I was mainly thinking about my girls. Are they going to think this is strange? Jenna Rat, I don't know that name. Good evening, Steve. In these dark and dreadful days, I found myself retreating to literature more so than usual. Yeah. I wish I could say you and everybody else, but I don't believe there's been much of a COVID-style uptick in reading. Not that doom scrolling is here now. I take it as a point of comfort that something like the Decameron or the Canterbury Tales can survive the bleakness of the Black Death, that humanity can maybe move past its current mess of things. Do you feel like this at all? I'm afraid not. I don't want to add to your doom and gloom, but I'm afraid not. There's nothing that Donald Trump wants more than blind loyalty, complete loyalty, all the money in the world. He doesn't just want all the money he can get. He wants all the money that exists in the world. And also what he dimly thinks of as a place in history. He wants all of those things. And the combination of, I don't even know. I don't even know what would happen. He knows already how unpopular he is. He knows that everybody in the country hates him, that everybody in the world hates him. His underlings in the West Wing try hard to insulate him from the outside world, but he's online all the time. So he doesn't do his job. He doesn't do any kind of work as president. He's online all the time. He knows perfectly well that the whole world is waiting for him to die. And that the sheer amount of joy is going to be, I would argue, unprecedented in the modern era, even including the death of Hitler. He must know that. So I can't agree with you about humanity maybe moving past its current mess, because I believe that he will launch nuclear war. I firmly believe. I didn't believe that a few years ago. Now I believe it. Now I believe that this is the guy who's going to do it. I think, again, about in specifically Nazi terms. And I have asked World War II experts. I have what my own reading in World War II tells me without any shadow of a doubt, which is that in his final days in the bunker, if Adolf Hitler had had nuclear weapons, he would have bombed Germany. He might have been interested in bombing, France or Britain even, but he would definitely have bombed his own country, definitely, because they let him down. And because to a malignant narcissist, there should be no world after them. I believe that if he can find the requisite competent people, which is not just another person with the launch key, but also a code. He needs a launch crew in several different locations. And he only has to find a couple of those, because once the first salvo is launched, international responses will be virtually automatic. And I think that will happen. I'd be very, very surprised if it doesn't, unless his foremost plan works. His foremost plan is to simply steamroller the United States into a full-blown autocracy, and to do that starting at what would be the midterm elections and definitely culminating in the next presidential election. I think he has a real good chance of simply making that happen, but there have been little odd pockets of resistance here and there. Those might be successful. You never know. If he doesn't get that to happen, I believe he will annihilate the world, which means that for once, the country won't get past this. The world won't get past this. It's like I've said, there's something that's almost fitting in the worst human being who has ever lived being the one that rings the curtain down on all of this. There's something almost fitting in that. Although it infuriates me, of course, because I know a lot of young people. But anyway, sorry, that was a very doom and gloom response here. Oh, the chat jumped right away. All right, but this is easy to find because you had 2 questions back to back. You broke your comment up, so that's going to be easy to see. Oh, good Lord, look at all these people. Okay, I'm seeing 16 people. This is like a lot more than 16 people. Amanda says, hi, Steve. Did you ever meet any of the many 20th century art historians who made Boston the intellectual epicenter of American art history? If so, was it pleasant? Any anecdotes? I've told a couple of anecdotes. I have met a couple of those figures, yes, particularly at the MFA, at the Museum of Fine Arts. It wasn't pleasant. Art people are not pleasant, generally speaking, or at least a certain generation of old epicene gay men are not pleasant at all. They are used to being mandarins in their own little kingdom. They're insufferable to talk to, just insufferable. I learned a lot, but Rena is reading, says, how is the paid writing project coming? Are you sick of serial killers? Yeah, oh, Rena, I was plenty sick of serial killers to start with. I was plenty sick of them to start with. I am beyond sick of them now, and I haven't got to the big 3. I'm still writing. It's going well. I haven't missed a deadline, and the money is real. Right now, I am working on serial killers that you haven't heard of. They have large body counts, but you haven't heard of them. But I know what this client wants. I know what this editor is going to be nudging me towards in my next section deadline, which is a few weeks away. After that, I know what they're going to want, and that is for me to start concentrating on the big 3. This client wants gay serial killers. And there are a lot of them. And that's why I had my lawyer scrutinize the contract, because I don't want this to be some sort of Hobby Lobby, that the end goal of this is that gay people become serial killers. I wanted to be able to pull out of it if I realized that was the direction it's going, and I have no hint of that at all. But right now I am dealing with, morbid but fascinating figures that other people have never heard of. But of course, this client is going to want me to do the big 3, which is, again, someone that no one's ever heard of, Dean Corll, but then John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer. That's not going to be fun at all, especially since a lot of nonsense has been written about both of them. But anyway, Sean Patrick is back. Steve, I've never read Francis Parkman, but I picked up his Oregon Trail, and the first installment of his multi-volume French and Indian War series. Would one be better to start with than the other? Start with the Oregon Trail. Everybody did. Everybody does. Start with that. It's a weird place to start because it's a totally different narrative register than the big history, but it will get you used to him, and I think it'll make you fall in love with him. Morgan says, can you name a few rock bands you like, if there are any? If there are any, yes, I can. but how many of them are very, very old? They might be very, very old. Well, I can name big ones that I like. Led Zeppelin, for instance, would be one. Well, of course, Foreigner Uh, do they count? They must count. Jay Giles Band, of course. I'm sounding more and more like a local here. There's lots. Anyway, California says, yay, Stevestream. Do you enjoy Aaron Copland? I did very much enjoy Aaron Copland in the men's room of the Kusavitsky shed at... Oh, I'm sorry. You mean his music? I do enjoy his music. Amanda says, is there an art historian whose work particularly impresses you? There are some that I mean, the place that I start is always Bernard Berenson, but what do you mean by historian? Are you actually talking about an art historian, or do you mean an art critic? I mean, for art historians, I'm no aesthete. So when it comes to art historians, things like Bernard Berenson, Kenneth Clark, people like that, I'm perfectly happy to start with and stop there for most of it. But if you're talking of art critiques, nobody beats Robert Hughes. Nobody does. He's incredible, just incredible. David Hume says, hey, Steve, not serial killers, but true crime. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos recently on the Madeleine McCann series. It's the 19th anniversary. Do you think parents are guilty or not? I think the parents are guilty. Yeah. But I'd love to know, I mean, if you've been watching a lot of videos, like this is the perfect way to do it, actually, too. If you have like a particular case and you watch a bunch of videos on that case, you're immediately going to start noticing the ones that are poorly done, the ones that are well done, the ones that are obviously cribbing from other videos. I'd love to know what you make of all that. I encounter that all the time. Naturally, I try to stay away from YouTube for research for the project that I'm on now. But like, for instance, what's his name? The young man who disappeared from a snowy trail in Colorado. And nobody knows where he is. He didn't show up in a snowdrift. Body has never reappeared. Or oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. The most famous missing persons case of them all. Brian, help me out here. A medical student disappears at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. I don't remember his last name. I'm blanking on his last name, but he disappeared, and there are a million videos on him. Brian. Oh, anyway. He disappeared, and there are a million videos on them, and you can see the difference in quality between them. Or Chandler Halverson, the family annihilator, Chandler Halverson. He another example, a million videos on him. And I'd love to hear from you, from someone else who has seen that. Oh, that's driving me crazy. Sorry. I know we've got a lot of questions to go through, but let's, you're probably all shouting out the name. Oh, you true crime, you true crime, Brian Schaefer. There we go. Brian Schaefer. I watch a million videos on Brian Schaefer, trying to figure out, what happened to him. And you notice right away, if you watch like 10 videos in a row on the same case, you notice the difference in quality. Let's see here. J Art Studio says, hey, Steve, what are your overall stances / thoughts on abortion? Okay, well, it's a touchy subject, right? The standard piece of advice that you get all the time when beginning your social life is don't talk about things like abortion or religion. Now, I know I can talk about religion with all of you people, and we can disagree or not. Abortion, though, as far as I'm concerned, once the fetus is a separate individual, the mother no more has a right to kill it than she does to kill another human walking around in the world. As far as I'm concerned, the rubric of bodily autonomy or woman's choice is often simple rhetorical bullying. If the fetus has its own fingerprints, its own blood type, its own heartbeat, reacts to things differently and at different times than the mother, in other words, in the old medieval phrase, after the quickening of the fetus, then I don't really care if at that moment it would die if it were outside of the mother's womb. I don't really care about that. It's a separate person at that point, and I can have all the sympathy in the world for how it got there, but it's a separate person at that point. It's It's turning its head away from a bright light outside the mother's belly. It's smiling. It's burping and smiling at the fact that it burped. That's a separate person. That's now, that of course doesn't apply to 95% of abortions, which are just cellular growth, entirely dependent on the mother, not anything at all that is separate from her. It's basically a metastatic process inside her body. That's 95% of abortions. But the idea that I've heard that because the fetus is inside a woman's body, she has total unrestricted sovereignty over what happens to it, I do not agree with. Once the fetus is a separate person from the mother, I don't agree with that. I don't know if that helped any. I don't know if you stormed off in a huff. We can drop the subject. Sean Patrick says, Steve, which do you think is shakier proposition? Actors who try to become musicians or musicians who try to become actors? The shakier proposition would be actors trying to become musicians. Mr. Josh E. Guy, I'm seeing names I don't know. I wish my times were better for this. I'm wandering around Bangkok airport listening. Are you really? Are you really? Oh my. I have never been to the Bangkok airport. I've never been to any airport in Bangkok. John O'Connell says, you were planning on having a live stream during the Tony Awards. Not a fan of the theater. yeah, I'm well known to be not a fan of the theater. Stephen Newton says, it is good to finally see you again. Well, isn't that nice? Amanda says, do you like the book The Bostonians, Painters of an Elegant Age, 1870-1930 by Theodore Stebbins? Are there other books about the topic you recommend? The Bostonians, Painters of an Elegant Age. That rings a bell. I think I have that book. There've been, every time there's a show at the MFA or the Gardner, there's always a companion book. I've had dozens of them over the years. Looking at the incredible artwork trends that happened, and of course, a couple of Boston painters and a sculptor from that period are my favorite artists in the world, my favorite artists in the history of art. So, but I'm not going to be able to reel off others off the top of my head. A lot of them would be museum accompanying books, so those are always hard for me to remember. Ghost Boy says, I love Penguin Classics. I would love to be a documentary for university about the line. Do you mean you would love to do a documentary about the line? I'm not. I think there's a word or two off there. Ethan Sayer says, are there any books about Canada that you would recommend? Well, I would certainly recommend anything by Pierre Burton, Canada's greatest historian. I recommend he did 2 books on the War of 1812. He also did a book called My Country, a more of a memoir type thing about Canada. But he did a lot of other stuff too, a lot of stuff that has never been published in the United States, all about Canada. And he's amazing to read. Amazing to read. Rena is reading is back. If you do get back to your regular posting schedule, may I kindly request the June Air videos being, oh my God, the number of videos I've got about June Air. You and Hannah are my favorite duo team up. Yes. The number of emails that I've got about June Air. Yes, I will definitely get back to it. I'll try to do that tomorrow. Danger Kid is here. Steve, thoughts on the whole 60 Minutes and Scott Pelley saga? What Danger Kid is referring to here is that Scott Pelley was unceremoniously fired and went public with one of the many fascist demands that were put on him by what the people who would have been his new paymasters. They were very specific in saying that when you talk about the murder of Renee Good, you must say that she was driving at an ICE Gestapo agent when she was shot, which is not true. He points it out himself in an interview. That's not true. That's not on video. That's not what your own eyes see. Not to mention the fact that the Gestapo member, who's still free, still walking around, still going to Hardee's, still drawing a paycheck, no justice at all for cold-bloodedly murdering someone on camera. That Gestapo agent shot her once and then shot her twice and then shot her a third time. Now, the government stole the body. Total violation of Minnesota law. The government stole the body. So we don't know, but you can tell from the video that he was trying to get a headshot. That's not what you do if you're frightened. That's not what you do if you're in danger. That's not what you do if a car is bearing down on you. And the car wasn't. It was, Helly was just told to lie. And I thought it was good on him to say that. He could have been a lot more forthright. He could have named a lot more names in that interview than he did. But the main takeaway I had from it is that if he was told to say that, and he was willing to admit that after he was fired, then how much was he told to say on camera that he did say? And how much, by the same token, do all the fascist-friendly mainstream news readers say? Not just the extremely compromised Tony Ducapil, but everybody. It's a sign that the various fascist organizations in the world have realized that the press is its number one enemy. They always realize that. They're always oddly late to realize it, but they always get around to it. Hence the calls for the execution of all these people on the White House website. Kay Napolo says, as a lifelong Knicks fan, I am upset. I don't doubt you're upset. What an a-hole. In addition to everything else, the guy is just an a-hole. I saw it last week, and I'm still thinking about it. Gen Z does Kafka, modern mythology, or POTUS has decided to take away what should be a fun celebration and hijacked it for his inflated ego. Exactly. He has ruined it for Knicks fans in New York. He has ruined it. And he knew he was doing it. He was told when he floated the idea, you will ruin this for everybody in the town. But he hates New York because New York hates him. He hates New York. Nothing he'd like better. In an alternate universe in which he is a lovable person, there's nothing he'd like better than to be the hometown boy meets good. Becomes president twice. But New Yorkers hate him because they know him. And this is just plain and simple revenge. It's just, not to mention the fact that if I were Irish bog trotter enough, I would say that in addition to ruining the event, he also jinxed the Knicks. We'll see. Now, David Hume says, do you like the film Backrooms? I saw it last week and I'm still thinking about it. Gen Z does Kafka, modern mythology, or both. I'm not knowing the word Backrooms. Do I know that? Who's in it? Albert Goldfein says, you have said a few times recently that this year's new fiction has been way more misses than hits. Yeah, to put it mildly. Oh, what was the best year for hits to misses in recent memory? I think it was in the mid 2010s. I remember thinking of that in like 2014, 2015, 2016, thinking, there are a lot of good things in here. My yardstick is always, how hard is it for me to make a top 10 list at the end of the year? How many things am I excluding and how much am I agonizing over that? Right now, I would have a hard time getting to 5, much less 10 for that list. Tim's Too Many Books says, a short Stevestream, only 90 plus minutes. No. 10 past the hour. Andrew says, random comment, I know, but I'm on a WW2 binge at the moment, and I'm reading James Holland's Battle of Britain, which I believe you recommended in your World War II starter kit. I think I did, yeah. California says, is there a relatively modern version of Chapman's Homer with good notes, or is Project Gutenberg the best bet? Yes, there's a trade paperback. It might not still be in print. Oh, who did it? One of you will have to help me out here. I think it was a university press. They did Chapman's Homer. They did the Iliad and the Odyssey. I have them in the little book room. They're well out of reach of me now. Actually, since we've got the iPad right here, my iPad's never far away from me. There's Brian Schaefer's face staring at me. But I still haven't done an actual widget just for Amazon Books. I have that on my laptop where it's just Amazon. It's not Amazon. I don't have to go to Amazon and then look for books and whatnot. But I still haven't done that for this iPad. I really should. And it's actually called Chapman's Homer. It's not called... let's see if it'll do. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Look at that. It came up right away. Oh, boy, I'm so smart. Yeah, this is Princeton University Press, and this was from the late 1990s. Looks like it's still available. It's really, really good. It's a really, really good edition, as you'd expect from Princeton. California says, what do you think of Evelyn Waugh's Sword of Honor trilogy? I love it. I love the 80s adaptation of Brideshead Revisited and wanted to read more of his output. I love it. It's really, really good. If you loved the the adaptation of Brideshead Revisited, you're going to find everything else that he wrote to be a come down. And even if you're not familiar with the adaptation and you just love Brideshead Revisited, the book, you might still find everything else he wrote to be a come down. I could be wrong about that. Certainly it is for me. Sean Patrick is back. Steve, for writers of history, which do you think is more difficult, writing book after book on the same historical era or keeping it fresh and writing books after book on different historical subjects? Well, more difficult would be switching subjects. Of course, it's going to be easier to write, 4 books on Carolingian monarchs when you've studied the whole period, so you know everything about it, or Carolingian figures, so you already know all the background to it. Or, previously mentioned World War II. Jumping subjects completely, that can be tricky. That can be really tricky. That can open you up to the kind of informed scrutiny from experts that a lot of professional writers don't like. Columbian Thunder is here. Happy Stevestream, Steve. I've finished Trollops the Warden. I plan to read Barchester Towers immediately after I finish Hyperion and Missioner Space. I am in for some reading. You are. You don't have a dud in the bunch there. Albert Goldfane says, I started Eleanor of Aquitaine by Mead on your recommendation. This is so good. I hardly read any historical biography. All the rest of you in the chat, kindly note, when it comes to book reviewing, Steve knows what he's doing. He isn't recommending blindly. If he recommends you a book, it's because it's really good. It's better than its competitors. How he does that, I don't know, since he obviously doesn't read what he talks about. I mean, if he did, that would be the proof in the pudding that his recommendations have squarely landed for, 315,000 people over 50 years. But it's still fake. Anyway, I'm glad you like it. As soon as you're done, if you want another historical biography recommendation, I'd be happy to make one. Morgan Mello says, do you have a favorite Simpsons character? Maybe one from the family and one supporting character? Well, the one from the family certainly wouldn't be Bart, right? Because of that moment when he walks into the living room, looks at the bookcase and says, stupid books. And I suppose I'm duty bound to say that my favorite supporting character is the Android's Dungeon guy. Don't you have any friends? Well, I have super friends. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I'd like to read Mural Spark, but I have no idea where to start. Any suggestions? It depends on what kind of reading you want to do. Do you want to read what Mural Spark, what all the fuss is about, or do you want to know the author? If you want to know the author, you just start at the beginning. Read her first published books and go from there. If you're saying, no, I don't have that kind of time, no offense intended, but I don't have that kind of time, well, then read The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Can't think of a better place to start than that. Her one claim to actual immortality. Leo Percara says, hello, Steve. Do you like the new big 3 of cartoons for adults? BoJack Horseman, F is for Family, and Rick and Morty. Actually, not all that much, no. Tolstoy 111 says, I know of only 3 people who have read all of Trollope: Steve Donahue, Katie from Books and Things, and Clavicular. yes, Clavicular. He's well known as being a Trollopian. It really, I know he's ridiculous, he's contemptible, and he's going to be dead in August, but nevertheless, you got to feel a little sad for people like him. You just do. If you've got a human heart in you, you've got to feel a little sad. It's not only that he's never read Trollope, it's that he has no idea, he has no ability to. He'll never experience not just Trollope, but any of the reading joys that we have. He'll never experience them. It's just so sad. Amanda says, is there a book on comic book artists comparing and contrasting their styles and developments that you'd recommend? No, as far as I know, there is not. Certainly not from any of the major presses, the mainstream presses that would send their books to me or send me catalogs of their books. No, that, talk about art history. That very thing seems to me to be largely missing. Unless it's some sort of specialty convention only book that I've never heard of, but certainly no mainstream thing. I guess it's not a mainstream hobbies, but Kay Napolo says, reading Ovid's Metamorphoses, well, enjoying it, but realize I'm in deep waters because of my obvious lack of Greek mythology. Well, lack of Greek mythology is easily acquired, right? I mean, it's easily acquired. Most English language translations of the Metamorphoses, for instance, will have a little block of hypertext at the top of every chapter telling you what's in the chapter by proper name. You could look those up on Wikipedia, or you could stop reading Ovid just long enough to read Edith Hamilton's mythology. But I want to know what translation you're using. Cozy PS says, in the past 10 years, people have become obsessed with Japan. 20 years ago, it was France. What will be the next hot new country? I think young people will soon be mad about Vietnam. Could easily be Vietnam, but I don't think, in my own sense, I don't think there'll be time for that. I don't want to depress any of you, but I am more and more of the opinion that the human race will not survive Donald Trump, and that crucible will come soon. Moth says, how is your book trek going, Steve? It's going well. I'm not documenting it on camera. That's the problem. I feel terrible about the lack of videos, hence the Stevestream. Trip says, what do you think about MAGA already saying the LA election is stolen? I know. I wonder what they will try and pull in 2028. We've already been told what they will do. We've already been told that. And not in 2028. They're going to try it at the midterms in just a few months. The Trump regime has already said they're going to send the army. Now, they use, again, a mobster euphemism, an army of observers, but they don't mean that. They mean the same people that killed Alex Preddy and Rene Good. Masked from head to toe, armed, unidentifiable, there to intimidate, there to scare, there to disincentivize non-fascist voters. That's what they're going to do. They're also going to claim that every single race, local, state, federal, whatever, from now on, that they don't win, was rigged. And perhaps most important of all, they're not going to certify or seat any non-fascist candidate who wins. Which is why I have been saying for 10 years that Donald Trump is not just a symptom. He has permanently changed the country. So I would expect that. I would expect deaths, and not just, you won't have to wait till 2028. I would expect that the next headline grabbing deaths that happen in the United States will happen at the World Cup, and then there will be deaths at the midterms. Colombian Hunter says, I still haven't seen Masters of the Universe. Was curious if you had. I have seen it. I have a screener of it. I've only watched it once. First of all, I am not, an original fan of the cartoon. I thought that Frank Langella was obviously having a great time as Skeletor in the original movie, but I didn't care about it otherwise. I don't have this mythic association with it that so many, there's so many people do. So many men seem to have with it. I don't have that at all. But I don't know how to pronounce his name. Nicholas Galizzini or whatever the name of the star is. He's not good. He's just not good. In interviews, he seems like a nice enough guy, but he's not good. I have never seen him be good at anything. And he's not good in this. You can practically see him looking off camera at the minute by minute reminders and prompts that he's getting to do whatever he's going to do. And also, he's an obvious 5-pack-a-day tobacco addict. So watching him, do sword fights when he has to have an oxygen canister when 15 seconds of that scene is over, it's not for me. None of it is for me. Manny says, I finished The Duke's Children a few days ago, and what a book. I knew 100 pages in that it would be my favorite Trollope novel. Feel a bit empty now that I'm done with the Pallisers. Well, you can always read them again. I am looking forward to reading The Duke's Children out loud, page by page, on this channel. Manny is back. For now, until I read them, at least, yeah, you reread Trollope your whole life. J. Scott Phillips is here. All the things you haven't done lately. Jane Eyre, The Pallisers, Book Trek, June on the Range. What about Blob Watch? I know. Well, Blob Watch, we can do that. You weren't sympathizing with me at all. You were setting me up. All right, we can do Blob Watch, because Blob Watch might actually be something. Boston is headed for heat all week long. Today, no, but all the rest of it, heat, high 80s, low 90s. And there are blobs right along with that. Let's see. Is it the little iPad that sometimes acts up? I actually don't know where the large iPad is. It's probably in a little book room. But I'd be interested. I haven't looked at a blob watch. I'd be interested to see where these storms are coming from. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, there is activity over the Midwest, right at the lakes there, right at Chicago, and down below, down in Alabama and Atlanta. So there is a kind of pincer movement that could come to New England. That could actually happen. That's unstable. And it looks like we're going to get the instability right along with the temperatures. Ordinarily, the pattern here is that it gets hotter and more humid, hotter and more humid, hotter and more humid, and then we get a round of thunderstorms, and that breaks everything completely. And it can be raucous, but the next day is dry and cool. Sometimes the temperature drops by 25 degrees. It doesn't look like that's going to happen this time around. It looks like we're going to have days and days and days of hot weather that is also rainy weather. But you were probably talking about yourself, weren't you? The other end of the country, the boring coast. Nothing. Pacific Northwest, yes, but nothing really. So an eventful blob watch. Not right away. I think midweek we will start to have persistent threat of rain. Whether it comes to that or not, I don't know. I'm actually thinking about whether or not I should go to the Brattle tomorrow. Tomorrow is it's absolutely clear there's not going to be any rain tomorrow. It's going to be hot, 90 degrees, but it's not going to be raining. I'm having a dither about so many ordinary things these days. Morgan says, what are the Batman essentials to read? Well, I believe there's lots of argument about. No, actually, I should put it another way. There's plenty of agreement about the Batman essentials. I just don't agree on them. I think Hush is overwritten. I think Court of Owls is monstrously overwritten. It has great artwork, but it's monstrously overwritten. I think that Hush is badly, or Long Halloween is badly overrated. A Death in the Family is preposterous. I don't agree with a lot of Batman fans when it comes to basics. Now, Batman fans will say two things for sure. Now, keep in mind, I haven't read these things because I haven't read anything. But nevertheless, Batman fans will say two things for sure: Batman Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One. And I will agree for impact on the character, but the more I reread Batman Dark Knight Returns, the more I have to pick and choose the stuff I actually like. Whereas Batman Year One is, I think, one of the greatest stories in comicdom. Not just Batman, anybody. I think it's pretty much its only rival is Daredevil Born Again, also by Frank Miller. You should definitely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, read Batman Year One. Stephen Newton says, hey, Steve, hope your June on the Range is improving since that first book. It hasn't really, but I'm plugging along. I will give a report. I'll try to do all these things tomorrow. Thomas Gerakis says, any messages, DMs on your output would be guided by one basic point. It's your channel and not Peoria's. What was that about the emails? Well, I know. I always joke that this is not a democracy, but nevertheless, people, if you're talking about the emails that I've been getting, especially about June Air, they're pretty heartfelt. I mean, you've read all the articles about how YouTube is the new TV. And even before those articles came out, years before those articles came out, I still knew that a lot of people have a kind of mental appointment with me every day. They're really happy to see when Hannah makes a video. They love it when Sarah gives an update. Of course, they never miss Michael K. Vaughan or Criminale, but none of those people make videos as often as I do. And they have a kind of mental appointment with me, and I value that. I'm not trivializing that. So though I know I'm not feeling bullied, is what I mean to say. Very nice of you to say. Stick up for me. Tolstoy 111 says, speaking of finishing long-running series, C-SPAN just interviewed Robert Caro in his office, and he said he had like 900 pages of LBA finale done. Okay. Yes. Well, it wouldn't be a mention of Game of Thrones, of Song of Ice and Fire, unless Robert Caro then made an appearance soon after, would it? Kolst says, hey, Steve, what is your assessment of Joe Queenan and his memoir Closing Time? I've never seen anything of what people see in him. So I've never seen anything that makes him have fans. John O'Connell says, did you see the recent interview with Robert Caro on C-SPAN? I did. Yes. I saw it. I just don't believe it. That's all. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I read my first Jim Thompson, and it was The Killer Inside Me. I really liked it, but wow, really dark. Is that the kind of post-war noir reads in general? Nobody writes post-war noir better than Thompson. So the way it reads in general, sure, in broad strokes, but not that degree of talent. It wasn't just very dark, right? When I'm sure you also noticed how brilliant it was. And that for maybe Margaret Millar, maybe James Cain, but the list is very short for people like that doing that well. Thomas is back. How interesting. I hoped Carol was looking spry. He was looking spry. Sure, they always do right before they drop off the twig. Some Okie Dude is here. Hello, Steve. I just wanted to pop in real quick and let you know I'm reading American Tabloid, and you're right. The prose feels like bullets from a gun. Wait till you get to the Cold 6000. Oh, it's that effect ramped up to 1,000. American Tabloid still has what you could call narrative prose. And the Cold 6000 has almost none. Some Okie Dude's return. Oh, no, Some Okie Dude returned, but then the chat jumped. Let's go and find you again. A lot of people here. What's going on here? Okay, well, we're going to find you. We're looking for Some Okie Dude. And we need a real Some Okie Dude comment. We can't have us agreeing. We're supposed to disagree about everything. Oh, you've made other comments. Okay, well, we're going to keep going until we find it. Good Lord, there are a lot of people here. Okay, here we go. What insane control he has in painting scenes using minimal words. It's amazing. It's amazing. Minimal words. It's amazing how much he takes out. I thought Elmore Leonard did a lot of that, but Elmore Leonard is Edward Gibbon compared to this guy at his peak in that role. Some Okie Dude says, reading this after Gloriana has been a treat. Columbia Thunder says, I wouldn't put it past him to put some kind of K-switch to launch things at America the moment he passes. He has bunkers. He has safety, at least what he thinks is safety. I don't think he'll wait until he's dying. He's not going to die for a long, long time, 20 years. Stephen Newton says, did you see Trump threw a tantrum on NBC? Yes, I watched it. I felt all the spectrum of emotions that you would feel. I was intensely embarrassed. I was infuriated because he literally believes this litany of lies now. He's not kidding anymore. Yeah, I saw it. The whole world saw it. Manny says, is it a hot take to like the Game of Thrones TV show better than the books? Recently, I even found myself enjoying certain parts of season 8, the forbidden season 8. No, it's not a hot take. Of course, not from me. The TV show is much better than the books. So, of course, you're not going to get any argument from me when it comes to that. Felix says, hi, Steve. Is Hermione Lee's biography of Virginia Woolf a good read? It is. Baby says, don't take this the wrong way. Okay. Haven't heard the rest of the comment, but that's not good. That's usually what someone says before they're going to insult me. But I was wondering what's behind your deep hatred of pretentious people. Oh, no. Well, that was fairly benign. Wouldn't you rather talk with a pretentious person than a dumb Trump voter that never read a book? I don't have to make a choice between arsenic and strychnine. They're both awful. It's not a question of wanting. They're both, they're both awful. I hate pretentious people. They are in their own way as dumb as Trump supporters. I don't have to rank them in terms of how horrible they are. Transparent Disguise says, if you were to make a, quote, bad book starter kit about books so uniquely bad that they cross into being fascinating, what would you put there? I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to recommend bad books. Some Okie Dude says, honestly, I'd like to see that. You're trying to something else. Christina says, hi, Steve. Do you stay in touch with any former retail colleagues aside from Deb? I feel like retail bonds people in such a unique way. I did it for 12 years, so I get it. It does bond people from the olden days. I would argue from before the internet, when it was a contact sport, especially at the holidays, when you bonded with people because they were literally in the trenches with you, taking the worst that people could get when they are at their worst behavior. But Not really. Aside from, I mean, Sam is technically from those days. He didn't stay in retail, but not really. No, people just have drifted away. Danger Kid says, "Ugh, the potential connections between Gacy and Coral are so utterly grim and stomach churning, and yet I find them fascinating, for lack of a better word." Yes, yes. The one particular connection, one man who clearly they both knew who they were connected to. I am really hoping that the client for this serial killer project does not notice my mentions of that man, because I do not want to research him. I do not want to. I'm telling this to a friend just the other day. I do not want to think what that research means, especially in light of the Epstein files. I don't want to think that the entire world actually runs on a currency of trafficked young sex slaves. I don't want to think that. I don't want to discover that is true. I don't want to discover that that's institutionally protected, although in the person of the man that you're talking about, was clearly institutionally protected. I don't want to research that man. Anyway, it is fascinating. I will give you that. I understand completely. You wish you had a better word, but it is fascinating. Thomas Jaraka says Led Zeppelin because they name dropped and memorialized Mordor. No, it's not just that. Morgan says, what do you think of the bands King Crimson, the Beach Boys, and Judas Priest? Not much. No Fleetwood Mac or the Doobie Brothers. JJ says, there are a couple of authors that I have never seen anyone on BookTube talk about. Well, there are a lot of authors, okay, or any of their books. Joseph Wambaugh and Elmore Leonard. Do you have any book recommendations by those two authors? I don't have any book recommendations for Wambaugh. No. I know I was supposed to. I know that there are a couple of books that he wrote, in his prime that briefly got recommended. Is Joseph Wambaugh even in print anymore? I don't know if he is or not. There are a couple of his more famous books from like 50 years ago that I know I was supposed to recommend. Even 50 years ago, I never thought they were all that good. But Elmore Leonard, you've heard me talk about. He's been on every library tour I've ever done. I love him. I think he's great. Some Okie Dude says, I'm thinking of reading Pronto from him. Yeah, from Elmore Leonard. Pronto, and of course for June on the Range, you can't go wrong with his Westerns. You just can't go wrong. Valdez is Coming is a much better book than the movie. You won't hear that from me very often. My favorite of his is a fairly easy thing. Called what's it called? See, I'd remember the title better if I'd actually read it or anything. But since I don't, Maximum Bob, that's the name of it. It's a fairly easy thing. I think Leonard would never admit it, but I think it was a little bit influenced by, of all people, Carl Hiaasen. But I love so much. I don't think I've read many of his books that I don't like. Anyway, Colonia Agrippina says, glad to catch your stream. Aaron, read a book, Praised Piranesi by Suzanne Clark. Do you concur? I do entirely. Yes. What a book. Oh, man. What a book. Bean on Books says, hey, Steve, you've read so many novels. Are there some books with well-executed twists that you didn't see coming? I'd assume it is harder for an author to pull a good twist on someone like you. It is a little bit harder. Yeah, because they're not. I read professionally, and I read a lot, and I've been reading a lot for a long time. And most of the gimmicks like that are telegraphed. The author might not even realize that he's telegraphing, but he is. I guess I could say that the twist at the end of the book Red Dragon by Thomas Harris, I guess I could say the first time I read it, that caught me by surprise. I guess I could say that. And it's not the end of the movie, but there is a moment in Meg Hell's Aquarium that definitely caught me by surprise. And there are also, more canonistically, there are famous scenes in Gravity's Rainbow that I think will catch anybody by surprise. You wander into them, and then you realize, like quicksand, you realize that you can't get out of them. You've got to keep going. But I would tend to agree that it probably is harder to get something like that by me. No snobbery intended, of course. It's just I'm not a normal reader. So, or am I? Maybe I don't read at all. JJ says, hello, Steve. Did you have the pleasure of watching The Mandalorian and Grogu? Aren't you glad we got that instead of more Andor? Sarcasm well received. Edward Gibbons says, "Hi Steve, what is the best English translation of Horace? I'm reading an old public edition with historical translation of great English poets, but I'd like something more modern by a single hand." Well, David Ferry did a volume that's not bad. It's not particularly Horatian, but it's not bad. And there's another one. I'm sorry, it's all the way over on the other side of the room. It's also not good. I mean, it is good. It's the most. It's the most. God, I really do need to get an Amazon Books thing here. Really don't. I'm going to do this on every video. I really do. Here, there's no way I'm going to be able to find it because it's older and it's not in print anymore. But I might as well mention it. I have often found that the best approach to Horace is the smorgasbord approach, like Horace in English or something like that has many different translations. Now, there's the David Ferry, but there's another one. There's one that's older, and it's green. It's green. I'm never going to be able to find it. There's just no way. I'm doing a Google image search. It's not really helping here. No, I'm not going to be able to find the one that I'm talking about. Modern Library did one that was lots of poets, I believe. And there's another one that, what was it? Everyman Library? Yeah, Everyman Library. Theirs is by James Michie. He doesn't get Horace. I mean, he understands how to translate Horace, but he doesn't get him, and you need that. I understand the desire for a single hand, but the names that are coming to mind, there's no name that comes automatically to mind as someone who definitely does it right. That I don't think, believe it or not, that Horace has had that translator. Anyway, let's see here. J. Scott Phillips says, "What did you make of the Lost Voices of Pompeii?" Not much. Jaya Studios says, "Why is Norman Rockwell your favorite artist?" Well, I joke about it. He's not actually my favorite artist. He's not actually my favorite artist. He's close. He'd be in the top 5. John Singer Sargent is my favorite artist. But what's not to love about Rockwell? Why wouldn't he be in my top 5? Mr. Francis Clare says, "I'm so excited to start my writing about Isabella Stewart Gardner and Frederick Law Olmsted. I know you have spent a lot of time in the museum. Have you been to Flo's home in Brookline?" I have, yes. And also I know the way the man thinks because I've spent an enormous amount of time in the Emerald Necklace with my dogs over a long, long period of time, better than half a century. Colombian Thunder says, "The world desperately needs a Walter Cronkite." Yeah, well, we've already been told we live in a post-truth world. I want you to keep in mind, Scott Pelley was fired. He was fired unceremoniously. He was brought into a room and he said within seconds, the word termination came up. He was fired. And then he went and did an interview and said one of the things they mentioned was saying that the Gestapo, that Renee Good drove her car at a Gestapo agent and he was firing in self-defense. And in the interview, he says, "Well, and that's not what we see on the tape. But would you have said it if you hadn't been fired? If instead you'd been given more money, would you have said it?" And I think the answer to that is yes. So yeah, we need a Walter Cronkite, but half the people that you talk to won't even know who he was or what he was. Andrew McDonald says, "Would you put The Awful Truth with Cary Grant as one of those classic films, unjustifiably forgotten?" I wouldn't. And Nassar says, "Hello, Steve. What are we talking about today?" Oh, everything that's on the chat's mind. Whatever's on the chat's mind. It's not going to be a long Stevestream, but we've got 21 people here yakking up a storm. TMTB says, "Did you watch Barney Frank's memorial? Did you know him or meet him?" I met him a few times. Yeah, I didn't watch the memorial, but I met him a few times, and I really liked him. J. Scott Phillips says, what did you make of the latest New York fiction issue? And he stands out. Why, this issue, you mean? I am reading it tonight. Tolstoy 111 says, "Do you like The Searchers by Alan LeMay? I love the film." I'm fairly indifferent to the book. Of course, I love the movie. You meant the book. J. Scott Phillips says, other than cartoons, that is, yes, there's one cartoon. How I wish this were a books issue instead of a fiction issue. There's one cartoon that I of course noticed right away. That since Scotty mentioned it, I feel free to find it and show it to you. I am a connoisseur. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, I am a connoisseur of New Yorker cartoons. I absolutely love them, even when they're bad. They've never been worse than they are now. But I love them even when they're bad. And at least once in every issue, there will be a cartoon that is really, really good. No matter how bad the rest of them are, there will be a cartoon that's really, yes, here it is. a Johnny Carson style late night TV show host, and Marcel Proust is in his chair, and the caption is, "So you eat the Madeleine, but the story doesn't end there, does it?" No, the story goes on for 5,000 more pages. So you eat the Madeleine, but the story doesn't end there, does it? I thought that was great. Anyway, Colombian Thunder says, I recently watched John Ford's My Darling Clementine. I found it genuinely mesmerizing. I still have many westerns to see, such as Liberty Valance and Red River, but it might be my favorite so far. It won't stay your favorite. I mean, I agree, but it won't stay your favorite. Liberty Valance, of course, is, in my opinion, the greatest Western ever made. But all the others that he did, My Darling Clementine is going to get blown out of the water. You were in for a lot of treats. Richard Fuller says, Steve, would you be willing to make a recommendation video for books recently moved into the public domain? I've recently fallen in love with the Kindle because of free reading. Well, I could do that. I'd have to check with Gavin from Genre Books, because he's done that. He does that from time to time, and I don't want to step on his toes because he can get me mean. I'll have to check. I'd love to do it. Sure. I'd love to. A tour of Project Gutenberg would be so much fun. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I'm just starting an ancient Rome deep dive with Durant, Caesar, and Christ. Good place to start. And I love it. He doesn't come off as musty to me. And no, he doesn't. That's what I always tell people. You're going to see these Will Durant volumes with no dust jackets at your yard sale. And the guy at the table is not going to be able to give them away. And don't be fooled by that. There's nothing musty about them at all. They're incredibly good reading. Caesar and Christ is a great way to start. It's a great way to start on ancient Rome. Baby Suge says, regarding abortion, there are about 70,000 second trimester abortion per year in the United States. In my opinion, it's horrible. That and factory farming will not look good in the future. Okay, I didn't know the number was that high, but I agree with you. California says, I just got the English Renaissance anthology by Norton. I'm very excited to read it. I don't know this volume. Is this brand new? Let's call out the old iPad, shall we? See, but this, I am a terrible typer. I don't have any feeling in my fingers. So this, we need a more streamlined way to do this. Okay, no, I'm not going to be able to find it. But I don't know. I don't think I know this volume. Michael Lombardo says, howdy partner. How was Daniel Krauss Angel Down as World War I fiction? I didn't like it. If it's the book I'm thinking of, I didn't like it. California says, do you enjoy Knights of the Burning Pestle, Beaumont and Fletcher? Is it worth reading? It's worth reading. Yeah, I'll find an annotated edition if you can. R. Ren DMC says, found a copy of a Mencken Chrestomathy for $1 at my local bookstore. I would have got that. I'm about ready to reconsider Mencken. J. Scott Phillips says, speaking of your recommendations, your hedgehog videos are costing me a small fortune, and yet I have not made one recently. I've been getting emails about that too. That's the problem with having a million ongoing series here, is that when you stop making videos, everybody's missing their own favorite. I should very much continue with hedgehog book recommendations. Or should I blame Christopher Russell? It's always a good idea to blame Christopher Russell for anything. He'll never watch this stream, so he'll never hear me say that. He doesn't care. He's abandoned me. When I want to pop a back pimple, I have to do it myself. California says, everyone who streams on Kick Should be put on a list. Michael Lombardo's back. My veterinarian has a family of newborn swallows nested just under the entrance of her office. Any action there at Hyde Nursery? My sparrows nest in the wainscoting of the house. They spend all day in the hedges making trouble and arguing with each other. But when it comes to sheltering for the night, they're all in bed now. Or when it comes to nests, they don't do nests out in the air. They do it inside the insulation of the house, about as protected as they can be. Thomas says, how does Putin save face while de facto conceding defeat? On your likely response, he'll go to tactical nukes. Won't the worldwide condemnation wave inform Trump's envy versus thinking at all? No, I don't think it will. Trump doesn't care at all, and has already not only contemplated but said many times in White House meetings that he would like to use tactical nukes on Iran. But the point that I want to make is there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a tactical nuke. There's no such thing as a limited nuclear exchange. When it happens, it will happen. When it happens with a small I, it will happen with a large I. And I don't think a standard, jackbooted maniac like Putin would be the way that I would think that humanity would be ushered out. But no, I think there's actually more poetic justice in it being Trump, the single worst human being who has ever lived. I think there's more poetic justice in him being the one that does it. Tripp says, can you talk about drawing, why you like it, how you started, what subjects you like to draw? I don't know when I started. I just love it. I'm not good at it at all, but I love it. I love the freewheeling nature of it. I have sort of divorced myself from needing physical models. I mean, for a long time, I did have physical models. I would draw sleeping dogs, or your own hand, the standard thing, your own hand. But now I will try to draw the face of a gorilla from memory, a giraffe from memory, and try to make it look good. Or I will go through a week or two of trying to figure out with just a pencil on white paper how to convey the texture of velvet. There are ways to do that. You just takes an endless amount of experimentation. Or the human face, the back muscle of an in shape young man is incredibly hard to do. It makes it easier when you pick your light source, because then you'll know what things are going to jump out and which things aren't. But it's incredibly hard to do and fun. I don't know if that answers your question. Richard Fuller says, how old were you when you wrote your first book, and how many books have you authored since then, including those written solely for your own amusement? Well, they'd all be written solely for my own amusement. What other motivation would I have? Are you suggesting I have written books under pseudonyms? Someone else's pseudonym? They would all be for my own amusement. I don't remember how old I was, but God, I love it. I miss it. I'm not doing it right now. Colombian Thunder says, do you have any advice to write good prose? Apart from just writing is reading it aloud and making sure it doesn't sound awkward enough. Those are excellent places to start. You're leaving, you said writing and reading it aloud to make sure it doesn't sound awkward. Those are excellent places to start. You left out something else, which is to read good prose by other people. Lots of it, to read all the time. Karen says, how about a little Frida watch? Well, she's right here. She's right next to me. She doesn't move much. Coldifornia says, you've mentioned your enthusiasm for Evan S. Connell. What do you think of his novel, Mrs. Bridge? I think it's great. Mrs. Bridge and Mr. Bridge. I think they're great. Cozy says, do you like Manga, A New History by, oh God, help us. I haven't got the book yet. A.K. Exner from Yale last year. I got it, but I think I sent it right away to James Holden. I don't think I even read it. It looked really good, but how would I know? I don't know the subject. Some Okie Dude said, Thundar's better anyway, can't beat Kirby. There we go. That's the Some Okie Dude I was waiting for. JJ says, I am struggling to get my young nephew into reading. To my horror, I discover he has logged over 18,000 hours in video game. Is there any hope? Or maybe he'd like Dude Bro lit. There might be hope. Yeah. I worry about struggling. If you're struggling, if he thinks you want him to do it, he'll never do it. If he thinks he's missing something that's really great, he will want to do it. He'll have a better chance of wanting to do it. In fact, a very strong thing that I would suggest is that you introduce him to BookTube. Get him watching Michael K. Vaughan. Get him watching Some Okie Dude. Get him watching Secret Fire Books. Get him watching Criminology. Get him watching me. Introduce him to BookTube. That could do a lot. California says, I hope you restart your Bible series. Yes, that's another series. We need to slog our way through Deuteronomy, and then we'll be done with the Pentateuch and on to the fun stuff. And I know that. I just haven't done it. That's all. Stephen Newton says, I got lucky at a book sale and found some Judge D books and grabbed most of them. Now I have to find the time to read them. Well, if you got lucky at this book sale recently, then you don't have to find the time to read them because you'll be sending them to me. Because it's the Summer of Tribute. Clarence Beeks says, your legend lives on from the Chippewa down to the big lake they call Kitchikumi. Some Okie Dude says, that said, Skeletor is one of my favorite hammy villains in all of fiction. Nassar says, I finished reading All Flesh is Grass a couple of days ago and really enjoyed it. Now I want to read more First Contact books. Is there any that you'd recommend? Oh my God. I could make a First Contact starter kit. There are lots that I would recommend. Colombian Thunder says, what are the telltale signs in an actor smokes 5 packs a day? Well, they'll sound inhuman. They'll sound like you're pulling a fat linoleum knife through the leather back of a sofa very slowly. They won't sound like it. They won't have a normal human register because it's depositing huge amounts of tar on their vocal cords, physically stopping the vocal cords from vibrating anywhere near the range that they normally do. It also changes your face. And it doesn't hurt if they have a gigantic film and photograph history of being an addict. Stephen Newton says, yes, we had a good deal of rain near Chicago and is now sticky and warm, going to turn hot. Yeah, that massive storm we didn't get here. It petered out completely. Michael Lombardo says, when do you read aloud? Could you perform the Duke's dialogue in John Wayne-ish vocalization? California says, do you understand Spanish? What is your favorite Spanish language novel? Well, according to, well-known authoritative sources, I don't understand anything. I've never read anything at all. But, I know that Alex Serrano once upon a time accused me of being a size queen. But I honestly do think La Regenta is my favorite Spanish language novel. I know that I should be picking much more famous ones than that. Penguin Classic actually made a big English language translation of it, but I read it in Spanish, and I didn't think I forget who did the English language translation. We'll see if we can do it. I'm proving not to be very good at this on the fly. Let's see. That actually worked. So great. Okay, the cover of this Penguin Classic is not telling me who the translator is, but I read the English language. I read that Penguin, and then I found the book at Schonhoff's at a foreign language bookstore and read it and thought I didn't think that the translation did it justice. Bean on Books says, I'd like to participate in Book Trek, but I've never seen a single episode or movie. Help, where do I start? What should I watch? What books do I read? It's overwhelming. You're alive on the third planet from this sun, and you've never seen any kind of Star Trek at all, ever in your life. Okay. All right. I'm pretty sure you could probably find whole episodes of the original series on YouTube. You could start there. Or maybe I'm sure that YouTube is full of orientation videos where they describe the whole world of Star Trek and all the first 5 iterations of it, first 5 franchises. You could start there. Some Okie Dude says Death in the Family is ridiculous. That's a good story in there, but why make the Joker the Shah of Iran? Oh, I thought for a minute you were going for the novel. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Of course, it's ridiculous. California says, I've always had a soft spot for Batman. No Man's Land was good, save for the ending. See, everyone is making when people bring up all these canonical Batman runs that are always on people's list of where should I start with Batman, they're almost always accompanied by these kinds of qualifications. And you can't do that with Batman Year One, which is why I think it's why I rate it so highly. Some Okie Dude is back. Batman Venom's really good. No, it's not. No. As is Batman the Man Who Laughs. No, they're both terrible. They're both terrible. It's just like old times. Sean Patrick says, Steve, I've never smoked, but I grew up in a household full of smokers. Was your youth the same? In my youth, everyone did, even the dogs. Morgan says, if I've already read Batman Year One, could you name just a few of your personal favorites after that? Well, any of the other, I mean, Batman Dark Knight Returns, right? But any of the other of the standard Batman answers, Batman The Long Halloween, Batman Hush, things like that will work fine if you start with Batman Year One, if you know what you're doing and you start with Batman Year One. I might also point out that Kingdom Come, which is not strictly a Batman story, is also a hell of a Batman story. Anyway, California says, oh no, the chat jumped. All right, let's go and find him. It was California. Oh goodness, California has a chatty Kathy. So that might not help us much. All right, well, we were talking about Batman as well. We'll just go until we find it. And in the meantime, I will do an unaccompanied a cappella version of Fleetwood Mac's Tusk. There we go. Do you enjoy the Coen brothers? I just rewatched Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. That's a really effective movie. I don't always like them, but that is really good. Michael Lombardo says, certainly better than the Odyssey that's in the movies theaters now. Michael Lombardo says, did you and MKV brainstorm on-screen team-ups, maybe a dueling top 10 of Western films? No, we did precious little in the way of brainstorming. Mainly just talked. Tammy George says, I'm reading Seduction, Sex, Lies, and Stardom in Howard Hughes' Hollywood by Karina Longworth. I want to read a Howard Hughes biography. Is there one you would recommend? I have only read, I think, 2, and they were both bad. Even by what little I know, they were both bad. I think he's due for one. So no, I don't have a recommendation. Tolstoy 111 is talking to someone else. California says the Coen brothers film A Serious Man might be the greatest expression of the Jewish American experience. California says, is there a good biography of William Blake? Yes, there is. I have to go back to the iPad. Is it Entered from Paradise? Stranger from Paradise? Oh God, help us. Okay, the old iPad's getting a workout here. Blake Bio Paradise. This one's not going to be in print. I'm almost certain of it, but it's really, really by far the best one. Better. I mean, The Stranger from Paradise by G.E. Bentley is amazing. To me, it's so much better than any other that it's the only one to read. Some Okie Dude is back. Unforgiven's a great Western. There's my Some Okie Dude comment of the day. I shall take off now. I'll let you know when I get the next where I'll get next with American Tabloid. Until next. Stephen Newton says, I have to admit people talk about bad prose and good prose, and I never really tell the difference. Unless the writing is really noticeably bad, I can't tell the difference. Well, yes. Right. It's all a question of practice. It's a question of practice. Like, imagine if you don't know anything about wine. It would take time for you to train your palate. That doesn't mean that the training of the palate, that the things you would realize once your palate is trained are imaginary. It would still be a real thing. At the very beginning of training your reading palate, you may see distinctions only when it comes to the wild ends of the spectrum. If prose is really, really bad, you'll notice it. But the more you look at prose, the more sensitive you will get to bad prose. John O'Connell says Trump was planning to sit courtside according to the reports, but will now watch from a luxury suite. He must think he's invincible. The security risk is astronomical. The security risk is astronomical, but he doesn't care because he hates his hometown. He hates it. He wants to ruin this. He knows, he's been told in exhaustive detail how much it will ruin this experience for so many people. And that just enthused him. He wants to do that. I agree completely with the online movement for the booing this time to be unequivocal. Remember the last time he went to, what was it? A sports car race or something? There was booing, but it was easily audible, but it was mixed with enough cheering so that the Fox people could say, I don't know what they're hearing. I'm hearing cheering. There was a movement now for him to be so resoundingly booed that the fascist friendly media simply can't show the clips at all. Morgan says, have you seen the Western Viggo Mortensen wrote, directed, and starred in The Dead Don't Hurt, featuring Danny Houston and Deadwood folks like Derek Dilhunt, W. Earl, and Reverend Smith's actor? No. Did Mortensen pick them because he's a fan of Deadwood? No, I don't know this at all. John O'Connell says, thoughts on the recently discovered short story by Edith Wharton? I haven't read it. I think the process is interesting, but I haven't read it. Edward Gibbons says, do you have a work of grand narrative world history to recommend? I finished Walter Raleigh's History of the World, and it's being so incomplete left me wanting something similar but fully finished. Well, Raleigh's is a period piece, right? He knows nothing at all about the history of the world. So you might want, like Robert's book, The History of the World, would be an excellent place to start. A little bit dry at times, but an excellent place. Better than Walter Raleigh. Rena is reading, says, I think the fake booktubers video perfectly showcases how pretentious people are, just as dumb as MAGA. Yeah, which is why I didn't want to choose between the two. Is that this President Sunday guy has, like I was trying to tell Mike when he was here, you might think when you listen to him that the ultimate expression of what would make him infuriated is me. Because clearly, if you watch that video, he doesn't even conceive that someone like me could be telling the truth about how much I read. Not even conceive of it. And so you would think that the quintessence of what would infuriate him would be me, but no, it's actually not me. It's actually Ollie or Michael K. Vaughan or all of you who have jobs and classes and relatives and wives and husbands and whatnot, who still manage to get in a huge amount of reading, the amount of reading that this moron says can't be done. You're the ones that he'd be most mad at. With me, he would dismiss me anyway for numbers, but he'd at least be able to say, well, this guy doesn't have anything else. He doesn't do anything else. It's you who he'd be really mad at. But yeah, dumb all around. Yeah. Let's see here. Manny says, the Duke's Children made me want to read Clarissa. Been a bit hesitant to pick it up for some reason because I absolutely loved every other English 18th century novel I've read. We've got to read. You got to do Clarissa, right? Even if there are parts of it you're not going to like. And Antone Ledadiana. Hi, Steve. I just finished reading The Award by Matthew Pearl, and I really liked it. And I'm currently reading Like a Cat Loves a Bird and loving it. Thank you for the great recommendations. You're welcome. Street Medic says Steely Dan, to which I say yes. California says, would you do a read-along of Moll Flanders with me, Steve? Nobody wants to do read-alongs with me. Nobody can do read-alongs with me. No, because I'm done. By the time you've got your little side table dish of perfect snacks ready, I'm finished with the book. So what kind of a buddy read is that? Echo Falls says, when you say that you'll have wine and calzones with friends, are those calzones homemade or from a restaurant? Which fillings? They're from a place next door. They have all kinds of fillings. You could spend a week without duplicating anything from them. More than a week. Not homemade. No. No. I'm just about up to steamed rice or spooning out Alpo. Richard Fuller says, how many people do you think have been turned off of reading by pretentious readers? I would bet quite a few. That's why when the subject comes up, I sound so reflexively angry, personally angry, because I bet that happens a lot. I mean, think about a pretentious person talking about books on BookTube. The last thing in your world, even if you're already a reader, the last thing in your world you want to do is do anything that they approve of. No, I bet that happens a lot. That's one of the reasons I hate it so much. Colombian Thunder says, did you happen to read anything about Colombian serial killers Not sure if I could recommend it or not because it's so upsetting, especially as an institutional failure. No, I'm sticking to the United States. I have not ever. I'm sticking to this project. I'm sticking to the United States. California says, do you enjoy the TV show Justified? I think it's one of the most underrated shows of the prestige drama era of TV. I don't know about one of the most underrated shows. I do enjoy it. Yeah. It bothers me a little that it is structured. It's clearly structured around giving viewers a dopamine hit with murder. It is clearly structured for you to be waiting for Waylon Givens' next kill. And that's obviously unhealthy. I don't like that at all. But it is really, really good. The rest of it is really, really good. Let's see here. Siva Bronstein says, hi, Steve. Remember that one time I asked if you thought about Mark Cuban would make a good president despite being a billionaire because he seemed halfway decent? No, I don't remember that. Tolstoy, but there is by definition no decent billionaire. Tolstoy 111 says, gratified to hear your skepticism regarding Joe Queenan. He really seems to think he's quite the wit. Yeah, to me, in no small part, that's one of the reasons for my lukewarm reaction to him is that he seems sold on himself. Damien says, I'm reading Jake Tapper's book on Biden. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? No professional journalistic book should be this bad. No, why would you do that? Drop it. Just drop it. Just drop it. You've got Louis L'Amour to read. You've got Jane Austen to read. You have no time to read. Manny says, I recently went back to the third book of A Song of Ice and Fire after and watched the TV show, and yeah, there's so many more memorable scenes and moments from the show. Yeah. Matt, but think about, for instance, the Red Wedding. Think about how utterly arresting that is on TV. And then think about the scene as George R. R. Martin wrote it. And then think about Jim Thompson writing that scene. It's embarrassing. Matt, the Distressed Reader, says, good evening, Steve. For June on the Range, I'm currently reading Anything for Billy by Larry McMurtry. It's a heck of a book. One of my favorite minor McMurtry novels. Echo Fall says, using this June on the Range as the motivation to finally read Warlock, and I've watched Winchester 73 and Naked Spur as a compliment. Can you please recommend a lighter pulp Western read after Warlock? Lighter meaning what? Lighter. I'm not sure what you mean by lighter. Less historically textured? I mean, the aforementioned Elmore Leonard will work fine for that. If by lighter you mean happier, you don't mean that, do you? I don't know if you do or not. You could, here, I'm not going to go to Amazon. Here, let me go. Let me see if I can find a specific recommendation for a. Okay, hang on just a minute. I know we can make this work. I know we can. Okay, I'm really close. I know I'm wasting your time, but hang on just a minute. I'm really close. I know we can make this work. Oh God, I know that we can, because I am drawing a complete blank, even though I just read it a bit ago and loved it. So if you mean light in terms of lighthearted, it perfectly fits the bill. Of course, maybe I didn't read it recently because it takes you, a good solid month to read a single book. But to do it properly, if you're going to do it properly, then there's no way you're going to read more than 4 books a year. And who determines properly? Why, I do, of course. Yeah, pretentious people are easy to get angry with. Easy. Here, let's get all high tech and do a search and see if it works. Oh, it did work. Oh, great. Okay. It did work. Fantastic. All right, I'm right on the cusp of things here. Okay. Okay. This is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. The author is William Johnstone, and these are his Cotton Pickens Westerns. This was called Mountain Massacre. I talked about it on this channel briefly, and I think in a Friday Reads. The title sounds very portentous, but these are the cotton picking westerns by William Johnstone are actually lighthearted comedic westerns, and they're very good. They're very, very good. You probably saw them on Kevin Toll Reads on his channel. That's where I learned about them. So that'll work, if that's what you mean. California says, are any of Emperor Julian's works worth reading? I know they featured heavily in Vidal's eponymous novel. Not really worth reading, no. I mean, no, not really. Not on their own. I mean, for historical purposes, sure, if you find an annotated version. Morgan says, have you seen A Single Man starring Colin Firth? Yes. Tom Ford, fashion guy, directed it and captured male beauty in such a uniquely indulgent way. Firth plays the 1960s grieving gay English professor. Yes, I know. I agree completely. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Colin Firth can do no wrong. California says, do you think Kirk Douglas was a good actor? I really enjoyed his performance in Ace in the Hole. I think he got done what he wanted to get done. Yeah. In pretty much every role that I've ever seen him in, he got done what he wanted to get done. So I think there might be a slight difference between that and being a good actor, but I would never turn down watching. Sarah Bell says, hello, Steve. Did the Friday Rights idea fizz out, or has it moved on to Substack? Maybe. No, it hasn't fizzed out. No, none of these ideas have fizzed out. I just have been phased out of, I've been out of sync with BookTube. I've not been making 5 or 6 videos a day. I haven't been doing that. But no, the idea is still on. Definitely still on. Karen says, 141 party here? No way. No way. Street Medic says, so I missed your prologue, so I don't know if you addressed it, but does it seem to you like MAGA response to Trump's Meet the Press meltdown is more desperate than usual? I haven't watched much of their response. So I've watched virtually no responses to it. But I know what they will do. Ultimately, I know what they will do. It's a religion, and God can do no wrong. So they will wrench their own personal reality into a place where what they saw is not wrong. If they had a colleague who acted that way at work, they'd slap them right there in the workplace. They wouldn't even wait to get to the parking lot, just slap across the face. If they had a kid who did that, that kid would be in serious trouble for half a year. It's self-evident, ridiculous behavior. Self-evidently pathetic, ridiculous behavior. Self-evidently. Across the board. It is simply universally unacceptable behavior. And they all know that. Their whole lives, their parents' lives, their grandparents' lives. But now that God has done it, they have to make it right. But I haven't watched it. So J. Scott Phillips says, as a lover of nonfiction books, what is the historical era or event you feel has been sorely overlooked? None. They all have tons of books on them. Declan Steiger says, has a new book from Mary Beard called Talking Classics crossed your desk? It has. California says, could we ever get a video on your favorite newspaper comics? I really liked your video on Walt Kelly's Pogo. I'd love to hear about your other favorites. Well, surely I've done at least a couple of videos on Prince Valiant. Surely I have. I don't know if I've ever talked about Lil Abner or Flash Gordon or Tarzan or Calvin and Hobbes, Doonesbury, Bloom County. I don't know if I've done. I've surely talked about Prince Valiant. Karen says, I stopped watching 60 Minutes when CBS cut the segment on C-Cut Prison. Luckily, I caught it on a Canadian TV and YouTube before it was taken down. Yeah. That's what there's no way that Scott Pelley would ever answer truthfully. But what I wanted to know is, would you have said that if you hadn't been fired? Would you have said that? I believe you would have. California says, I still think the best John Wayne's best movie is Rio Bravo. It's really good. It's not his best. He seems to act way more natural than he does in most of his movies. My Rifle, My Pony, and Me might be the best song ever composed for a film. That would be We're All in This Together from High School Musical. But I know your heart's in the right place. California says, Steve, you should join Letterboxd. I don't know what that is. Manny N says, I've been looking forward to Durant's book on Rome after his brilliant book on Greece, but I've determined to read Dryden's Plutarch before that. It's slow, but quite enjoyable reading. Street Medic says, I can't remember the author's name, but somewhere I have an old paperback of short stories that include Liberty Valance and A Man Called Horse. Danger Kid says, what does Steve think about neo-Western movies? No Country for Old Men, Hell or High Water, Wind River. Well, you could ask him. Street Medic says, yeah, one tactical nuke is just the first domino in a chain of unstoppable destruction. There is no such thing as a limited nuclear war. I can't believe that I am saying this 60 years later. It's just because the stupidest man who has ever been is president of the United States. The worst man, the worst human being who's ever lived, and the dumbest human being who's ever lived. Thomas says, have you ever been asked what book you predict will be in your hands when you pop your clogs, assuming statistical percentages dictating? No one's ever asked me that. No one's ever asked me that. Thomas says, and which book will you actually be found with? I'm assuming it'll be Meg. That makes sense. Street Medic says, do you blurb your own books? Just kidding, or am I? I'm quite sure I don't know what you mean. Manny says, do you like Smiles of a Summer Night? Don't know what that is. Hagasander says, is Maxine Rodenson's biography of Muhammad worth reading? I don't know that I've read that. Her name's not ringing a bell at all. Coldifornia says, what's your favorite dish to eat? Well, that's not really fair, is it? That's not really fair. A perfectly done swordfish steak is my favorite dish to eat. Not only would I not eat it, but I would get up and leave a room if someone else did. So, but that's not really a favorite thing. You mean a favorite dish now? A bowl full of mega stuffed Oreos would be just fine. The chat jumped, but that's okay because we have to start winding this up. Boy, oh boy, though, it feels like we just started, and this is so much fun. This is just so much fun. We have to find. There we go. Christina says, "Do you plan on continuing your read out of Jane Eyre?" Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I plan on continuing all the stuff on Steve Reads. I plan on continuing all of it. This has been a weird period where I get to an open stretch of time and I just want to write. Let's see here. Street Medic says, what kind of wine do you serve with what kind of calzone? I don't do any pairing, if that's what you mean. I get the cheapest red wine, hearty red wine, not a rosé. I get the cheapest Cabernet Sauvignon, at the wine shop up the street. The cheapest one. Lots of it. When I have a guest, we get lots of it because what they don't drink, I will drink. And then we get calzones, but there's no pairing going on. And Nassar says, it would be wonderful to have a first contact starter kit. It's an idea. Street Medic says, have you ever bought a book that reeks of cigarettes? I have. I get rid of them right away. Matt, the distressed reader, says, good Lord, Nolan's Odyssey film looks like crap. Take it from me. It's crap. It's a lot worse than what it looks. XJ says, Steve, what are your thoughts on Child of Light, the biography of Robert Stone by Madison Smart Bell? Well, I talked about it on this channel quite a bit. Didn't I also review it? I thought I also reviewed it. Maybe I've even blurbed on the paperback. I liked it. I thought it was very intriguing. Stone needs another biography, which sounds like I'm criticizing it, but I'm not. Madison Smart Bell is a great writer in many ways, and not in many ways, in some ways as great as Robert Stone, which presents not only opportunities, but huge problems. And I encountered all of those problems when I was reading it. But I loved it. I loved it. I'm sorry that I got rid of my finished copy. I would like to still have that. Steve Bronstein says, I'm sure you won't admit it, but my guess is that you use the pseudonym Gary Steingart. No, I don't use that. I don't use that pseudonym at all. No. Brian Johnshorn says, just watch NYT's interview with Scott Pelley. Incredible. Alexandra says, are you a fan of the Ali G show? No, I'm not. I guess I can theoretically recognize the talent in it, but it goes right by me. Whatever funny bone it's tickling, whatever appreciation bone it's tickling, I don't have. Street Medic says Appaloosa was pretty good. I agree. Richard Fuller says, will you ever give Faulkner another shot? I'm shocked that you lump him in with Dude Bro Lit so often. I do lump him in. I do justifiably lump him in, and I doubt I will give him another try. I've given him so many tries over the decades. I doubt that. I mean, I'm only 28, but even I have limited time. Must read more is here. Reading is super hard, bro. It hurts my brain. Yes. Manny says, do you think reading both good books and bad books is important for becoming a good critical reader? Well, I would never want to be put in a position where it looked like I was recommending reading bad books. If you're not on the Steve Donahue reading plan, if you're blundering around out in the dark on your own, picking your own books to read, you're going to encounter bad books on your own. There's no way to avoid that unless you take recommendations from me and never read anything but what I recommend. There are people in the world who've been doing that for decades. They've never read a bad book. None of their reading time is wasted. But you're not going to do that, so you're going to encounter bad books. I would not recommend going out and reading a bad book. No. Matt, the distressed reader, says, gotta go watch the Knicks. I hope that orange idiot doesn't ruin everything. Knicks in 4. I hope so too. It's not often that the rest of the East Coast is rooting for New York. We usually hate you, justifiably so. Right now, we all are. So everyone on the East Coast is hoping that he doesn't jinx the series. Knicks in 4 would be, even I would be celebrating if that happened. California says, do you like, but what happens if there's a tragedy at one of these games? What happens to the whole series? That's never happened before. Does it continue? Does it get postponed? Rescheduled? Despite the millions and millions and millions of dollars that gone into it? What happens then? What happens if there's a tragedy? I guess we'll all find out. California says, do you like Randy Newman? I just listened to Louisiana 1927 and it floored me. I do like him, yeah. Stephen Newton says, oh my God, it was President Sunday, the ass claiming people can't read so much. I knew that guy. He seems crap on everyone, left, right, and center. Well, only he knows how to do things, anything. Only he knows how to do the proper way. I couldn't help but laugh. Watching that video, I couldn't help but laugh. First of all, that he's picking on someone as innocuous as reading is a skill, but also that he's just making these flat pronouncements about how normal people can't read. And that if you believe they can, you're a moron. when again, I am not the quintessence of his ire. You are. He's saying you can't read. That you just don't. What does he say in that video? You don't have the time. You should be a Walmart reader. You don't have the time to do this. Well, all the booktube is proving him wrong every day. Anyway, California says, is there a good book / documentary about the Yorkshire Ripper? There's a very good documentary. Of course, I'm not going to know the name of it because there are a million on YouTube. But it's an older one. I think it was done for the BBC. It has a female presenter, which is a little bit of a rarity. It's an older thing. I'm never going to be able to find it, but no, I'm not even going to look. There is one that is head and shoulders better than all the others. It's older, but I don't have any. I'm not going to be any help to you because I don't have identifying things for it. I should get better at, or do what the streamers do. I should have a keyboard set up, a second modem set up. It's the poking at the iPad with my finger that I can't do at rapid speed. I could type this. I should have a second monitor. I don't have a second laptop. Let's see here. Colombian Thunder says, even as someone who enjoyed Infinite Jest at the time, it hurts to think so many non-readers would start with that and give up on reading altogether because dude bros love it. Yeah. Richard Fuller says, have you heard the band Angine de Potre? No, I have not. Of course not. Okay, Napolo says, they're booing Trump now. Fantastic. I wonder if he has a fake shooting plan for tonight. I just hope it would be nice if they booed him so unambiguously that there are no cheerings that is audible. It's not going to happen anywhere. It's going to happen in New York because he's never going to come to Boston. And I'm hoping that nothing like that happens. Not to get all Ian Carroll, but I'm hoping that's not the reason that he goes. Anyway, Street Medic says, people think I read a lot, but Steve isn't just next level. He's on a level all by himself. I'm not on a level all by myself, but I'm perfectly willing to admit that I am, as I have referred to old friends of mine, Olympic level. Why wouldn't I be? I say that it's a muscle that gets better the more you use it. Who uses it more than I do? I don't think, I have never encountered any resistance from any of you to me calling myself that, because you know what I'm talking about. It's not me being arrogant. It's not me being condescending. I have a healthy sized ego on lots of other subjects, but when it comes to reading, anyway, Morgan says Mortensen is a fan of Deadwood, but he didn't pick up those guys because of it. He said it was coincidence, probably based on the kind of films they are usually available for. Okay. Stephen Newton says, Up in Honey's Room is the only Elmore Leonard book I have read so far. The only one. Okay. And that was years ago. From my memory, it was fun, charming little book. Okay. You might want to read. Okay. Great. Well, you've got 100 other Elmore Leonard books that are better than that to read. You're going to love it. Street Medic says, remember when you didn't think about who the president was or what he was doing every single day? Yes, I do remember those days. But nobody born in the 20th century remembers those days. I do remember those days. Yeah. And well, Declan Steiger says, since you don't stray far from the comfy sofa most days and don't dig pants, are you aware of t-shirts, Steve? Well, I wear a collared shirt when I'm talking to you, my imaginary booktube friends. And I wear a collared shirt, of course, when I'm outside. And I'm going to be meeting people. I'm going to wear a t-shirt or a tank top. I'm not going to wear my pajamas when I'm outside. There are plenty of young people that will do that. But when it's just me and the bean here and nobody else, well, is there a burning need for clothing of any kind in those circumstances? I have never noticed it. Street Medic says, I have a few of Prince Valiant's books. I wish I had them all. Great art with great stories. I just lose track of time reading. Yeah, they still have that effect on me. I could use more. There are a couple of Prince Valiant collection volumes, big collection volumes that I've never found at the Brattle. I have quite a few. But Morgan says, yeah, A Single Man is amazing. I know you say directors don't matter, but Tom Ford's style is all over it. It's like one of his ads. He's surprisingly good at filmmaking. Ford has a new movie coming. Okay, I don't want to argue with you. We both agree on the movie. Most of what you're describing is attributable to someone else in that movie. JJ says, I've recently stumbled upon Donald Westlake. What series is better, the Dortmunder series or the Richard Parker books? The Richard Parker books, but they're all great. You are in for such a treat. He is such a great writer. Must Read More says, do you think the Ring Wraiths are a little underwhelming in the Fellowship of the Ring? Well, they start out that way. Yeah, they start out as ordinary bodied people who can make inquiries at little towns in Bree, people who don't seem all that threatening. They get threatening at Weathertop, but even then, they are driven off by a man with a burning torch. They're not driven off by Gandalf at Weathertop. They get more frightening as the book goes on. And I have read a whole bunch of theories along those lines, and I have a whole bunch of theories myself. I think the ring wraiths get much stronger once the ring is found and regularly used. I think they are directly connected to Sauron's power, which is mostly residing in the ring. Certainly, I think the closer it gets to Mordor, the more powerful they get. But at the beginning, they're a little overwhelming. They don't seem to be able. I mean, how hard can it be to run down a few hobbits on a road in the middle of nowhere? How hard can that be? Joe Van says, walking home drunk, listening to Steve Donahue, the perfect night. Oh my God, are you really doing that? Haga Sanders says, what happened yesterday? If you mean my channel, I just fell. It was a beautiful, gorgeous day. I was on the fainting couch. I just fell into writing and reading. It was as simple as that. It wasn't anything. It was just, aside from I tried a live stream last night to compensate for not making a bunch of videos, and even that didn't work. But the rest of the day, most of the day was just all the stuff I did before BookTube. Joe Van says, I want to start a BookTube channel and show off some interesting Balkan editions of books, especially my Will Durant Story of Civilization. Why not try it? You might like BookTube. There you go. Colombian Thunder says, I've also thought about starting a channel, but I go through books so slowly, I can't imagine I could be consistent with videos. We have plenty of slow readers on BookTube. They still manage. Manny says, have you ever had any interest in hockey, or has it only been baseball for you? I have had interest in hockey, yes. And I have never confirmed that it was baseball. Let's be sure of that. Joseph Malone says, what do you think of Naifa and Smith's Van Gogh biography? Are there any Van Gogh books that you would prefer? Are they the big canonical ones? The ones that, I'm not going to use the iPad. I'm not. There's a Van Gogh biography that I love, and it's not all that old. It's not all that old. It's like 10 years old, maybe a little more than that. It would have made my year-end list. I can't remember the name of the authors. I don't recognize these names, so you could be describing the one I'm thinking of. And that's I'm not an expert on art history or art biography at all. The one that I'm thinking of is the one that I really love, so it'd be the one I'd recommend. Street Medic says, I don't think you're arrogant about your reading at all. If you read a lot, you can tell if someone else reads a lot or if they're just saying that. I would think that would be true. Yes, I would think that would be true. Jovan says, what in your opinion is your opinion of the Gerald Butler Attila miniseries? The child actor who played Attila has remained ingrained in my memory. Yeah, the child actor, and also there was one other smaller part in the Roman section. Oh, who was it? It was also good. It was good. There were parts of it that I liked. Certainly, the sense of, perpetually on horseback, the sense of the culture of the Huns. It wasn't great, but there were parts that I liked. I'm trying to remember. There was a bit character in the Roman segment that was also like the child actor. Really stuck out. Boy, is that even available anymore? I'd love to watch that again. Rena is reading. Oh no, Rena is reading made the chat jump. There we go. Obviously people read, but the rest of Sunday's video was dumb too. Obviously the guy didn't use AI scripts. I know. Notice he makes that accusation, then immediately abandons it. He spoke intelligently on the books and made connections to others he read. Hobbies exist. I know. I shouldn't be giving that video any thought at all. It's just, I know it's not alone. He's not the only one out there who thinks that way. There are plenty of people on BookTube who think that way. Not on our corner of BookTube, but making videos regularly about books who do think that way, who think that books and reading is a religion. It's a church. And they are the priests. That has driven me crazy forever, since long before there was an internet. That has driven me crazy. Coldifornia says, where should I start with Donald Westlake? I would start with a book called The Axe. Just start there, and if that doesn't win you over completely, then nothing will. And you can move on from there, but start with The Axe. Morgan says, do conductors matter? Very little. If they are monumentally charismatic, they can. And they certainly matter more than directors, because I can, if you were to line up 5 Beethoven fifths, and one of the conductors was, I don't even know, Herbert von Karajan, I would definitely know that. I would know that it was his as opposed to anybody else's, which is not a distinction that I've usually seen in other directors, unless they're going for it, unless they're going for twee visuals like Wes Anderson or whatever. Coldifornia says, I just saw Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice. It was a loose adaptation of The Axe by Westlake. I haven't read the book, but I enjoyed the movie greatly. The book is tremendous. Joe Van says, yes, Steve, I just celebrated my graduation and I'm walking home drunk as a skunk, and I can't explain how happy I was when I saw Stevestream. Well, that's wonderful. Don't hurt yourself. Andrew says, you could always ask your friends at Fantagraphic for some complimentary copies of Prince Valiant. I don't have any friends at Fantagraphic. I wish I did. Comic book companies, I swear, they get it even less than normal publishers do. You're a comic book company and you're coming out with, I don't know, a $175 hardcover omnibus of a certain era of Superman. If you don't send a copy of that free to Michael K. Vaughan, you're nuts. You're just nuts. He could sell 6 copies of that just in one video. That already makes back your production cost. Just that one guy. I could sell 6 copies of that. Fantagraphics should send me everything they do. They should send it to me. Even if I don't end up talking about it, even if I don't end up enthusing about it, I'm still showing it to you. And we're going through it together. That kind of exposure is worth the price of paying. It's worth the price you're paying to send. Let's see here. Manny says, are there any must-read hockey books for hockey fans or just a very good one? Yeah, there are. Oh my God, there are lots. there are lots. There's one in particular. Well, no, there's not one in particular. There was. I'm blanking on the name of it. Probably because I never read it. There's a great, incredible two-fisted history of the whole sport, and it came out like 30 years ago, so it's not the history of the whole sport anymore. Oh, I'm never gonna be able to find it, but I could do a starter kit maybe. Let's see here. Declan says, will you still using Blinkist, bro? I rely on Blinkist. Jovan says, and thank you for recommending Winston Churchill's History of the English-Speaking Peoples. I like much more than Peter Ackroyd's history. Well, yeah, I'm a fan of Ackroyd, but there's no real comparison between the two. Paul McGinley says, thoughts on Anthony Pohl's books? I think he's even better than P.G. Wodehouse. Well, isn't that apples and oranges? I mean, Pohl doesn't write for comedy except for isolated comic scenes, right? So I don't know what that means, but I love his books. I'm in the minority, but I do love his books. California says, don't think this stream means you get out of your regular Tuesday Stevestream. I know. I need to get back in the saddle with everything on this channel. I really do. I'll try to do that tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be hot, which is going to have me worried about my baby Bean because she insists on Velcroing right next to me when my body is really hot. It doesn't matter. She has to be there. Morgan says, but if you had the same film crew headed by Zack Snyder versus John Ford, there is no way you'd get the same film, right? Right, but it wouldn't necessarily have to do with them. Street Medic says, what's the best book town you've ever been to, not including the one with the Brattle? I think it's Edinburgh. Might be Edinburgh. Or a long, long time ago, London. The first time I went to London. I don't know what London is like now. It's still amazing to me that I will never be there. I will never be in London again. Maybe it's better. California says, it was really depressing reading about Dark Horse Comics being bought by private equity. Yeah. Lots and lots of, it is really depressing. Morgan says, ditto for two particular filmmakers like David Lean or Tarantino. It'd never be the same. Okay. Karen says, I read one bad book this year and it was not a Steve recommend. So Steve, you are the best. Well, I won't recommend you a bad book. That's for sure. And the reason that I won't recommend you a bad book is because I thumb my nose. I give a Bronx cheer. I bite my thumb at the idea that, hey, it's all subjective, man. Who says there are good or bad books? You might recommend something that's good for you that ends up being bad for me. No, no thanks. No. Hegasander says, have you started with your Friday Rights project? If so, what subject have you gone for? I haven't done that at all. No, it's all been complete chaos. Complete disarray, if we're talking Deadwood terms. Complete disarray. But I will. It's only Monday. I can get back on track this week. Paul McGinley says, how can you shut off sub-vocalization when reading poetry? Don't you miss out on the music of the words? No wonder you don't get Robert Lowell's poems. Okay, first of all, I do get Robert Lowell's poems. A lot better than you do. I didn't say I didn't get them. I said I didn't like them. And I don't recommend shutting off sub-vocalization for poetry. I don't do it. I read poetry out loud usually. So you're wrong on a couple of points, Paul. No wonder you don't get Robert Lowell's poems. Jovan says, what do you think of people referring to popular histories written by authors like Winston Churchill as middlebrow? I don't mind being called middlebrow by 20th century. Oh, LOL. No, I would hope that this little corner of BookTube steels us all against the idiotic fake insult of middlebrow. I would hope. I have never had any truck with that at all. I've always been proudly middlebrow myself, and extra fueled by my proud middlebrow status to absolutely eviscerate people who say they're highbrow. That's why I hate pretentious people. I'll match my brain against yours any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I say to those pretentious people. You want to say, oh, you're middlebrow? Fine. Okay. Let's compare our knowledge of the textual variants in manuscripts of Cicero. What's that you say? You're completely out of your depth instantly? Okay. All right. Well, let's stay monoglot then. Let's compare our knowledge of the intricacies of the Fairy Queen. What's that you say? And so on and so forth. No, there's nothing wrong with middlebrow at all. I am middlebrow's foremost protector and its most fearsome protector because I can meet those pretentious people exactly where they live. Anyway, oh God, that was a lot in it, wasn't it? Jovan says 20th century standards. Well, you know, you're going to make mistakes. Kay in Napolo says, Steve, when you visit comic stores, what is the demographic? Are children reading or tagging along with their parents? I never see children or parents. I see mostly just extremely overweight incels. That's usually the only, if there's anybody there at all, that's what I see. But I don't go to comics that much, to stores that often. The last one that I went to was with Michael K. Vaughan. There was nobody in the store but us and the two people working there. And the one before that, I went to Harrison's in Salem with David Murphy. And David and I had already been joking. It became a running joke with us. When we were in a parking lot at a strip mall or a wine store or a big box store or the comic shop, everybody that we were seeing was what we termed a chud. Everybody was letting the side down for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm old. I'm old and big and fat and sweaty, but I had next to me this young guy who has 5% body fat, muscles all everywhere, coming out all over the place. And I was hoping that the rest of Massachusetts would kind of chin up to that level, and they weren't at all. They weren't at all. It was just shambling swamp monsters as far as the eye could see. But anyway. Morgan says someone like Nolan has changed the cinematographer, music, etc. You still know it's his particular banal vision, if you say so. Street Medic says I read poetry in Darth Vader's voice. Colombian Thunder says do not fear, Steve. I too am behind on Friday Rights, so it works out. California says this might be a bit of an obvious answer, but what do you think of Robert Frost? I'm assuming you mean his poetry. I like his poetry. Jovan says, I have a lazy eye, so I can't help being middlebrow. Wow. You're really committing to the bit, aren't you? Tolstoy 111 says, not a fan of Dwight McDonald, I bet. That's a long, long story. Fan, no. Enemy, no. That's a long story. Street Medic says lowbrow, middlebrow, highbrow, unibrow, whatever works. Jovan says, I just read the Jungle Books to my niece and nephew over the course of a week, and I can't thank you enough for the wonderful experience we all had. Yeah, well, thank you. Always happy when a recommendation lands, especially since I'm not actually reading any of these books. Hannah's Books is here just as we're wrapping things up. Hey, you didn't people like me see people like me in comic shops? No, I didn't. No. I have a feeling I've arrived only in time for the goodbyes. Yes, you have. We're wrapping this up. Manny says, hockey has been a huge part of my life, but I have somehow never read a book on it. A starter kit would be fun. Well, there aren't as many good books on it as you would think, at least in this country. There may have been some published in Canada that I don't know about that never made it into the United States. Most of them aren't good that I've read. But there's one. The thing that keeps coming to my mind is not hockey. It's a soccer book called The Ball is Round that is great. And there is an exact equivalent of that book for hockey that came out about 20 years before that book. I'm blanking on it completely. Morgan says, do you believe narrative video games are worthwhile art? Not particularly, no. Andrew says, is this still going? I fell asleep and have just woken up. You didn't miss much. Jovan says, good night, Steve. I'll remember this stream fondly tomorrow through my hangover. Oh, I feel for you. I don't get hangovers. I hope you're all right. Take the Ron Swanson approach. That'll probably work out. Street Medic says, "Bye, Steve. Great steam." Yeah, this was so much fun. I can't thank you people enough. For Ukrainian sex bots, you are simply the best Ukrainian sex bots of them all. Kalani Thunder says, "Have a good night." Paul McGinley's here. Do you have any favorite writers on boxing or any favorite boxing bios? Well, EIG, his biography of Muhammad Ali. Oh my God, what a book. And Hagesander says, as its subject is extremely precarious, what then is the best biography for Muhammad? There isn't one. There isn't a good one that I've ever read. They all assume the supernatural. Everyone that I've ever read assumes the supernatural. And the supernatural doesn't exist. There is, in fact, no supernatural existence in the universe. If you're going to assume that, then your biography is tainted right away, right out of the starting gate. But anyway, everyone's saying goodnight, and I have to say goodnight as well. So I'm gonna wrap this up. But this was a lot of fun. We will try to do this tomorrow night as per usual. And if I can manage to do that, I will see you all then. I'm going to concentrate on getting videos done, and then we'll do a live stream as the cherry on top. But anyway, this was so much fun. I'm going to go and anxiously watch the news. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube. Well, I'm not going to watch the news, though, am I? I'm going to read. I'm going to read. Well, I'll watch the news, too.